So, talking directly to Christians, I have to ask, have you ever actually thought about what it is that you're worshiping, that you're praising, that you're going to out of your way to praise and tell it how wonderful it is, showing your support, showing your approval of it? Have you ever thought about what exactly it is that you are following and calling loving and merciful and just? Ever thought about that? Really thought about that? Because I have. Imagine you've been a Christian your whole life and you die. And it's just like you've always heard. There's the white tunnel, and you're getting sucked up into this white tunnel, and you see distant shapes glowing, and as you approach, the rushing wind sound starts to fade, and you hear singing of angels distantly, and close by, those glowing figures start to resemble people that you know, people that you love. And you see your mom there. You don't see your dad, but you see your mom there. And you see your sister. And you see your cousins, the one that died before you, who suffered through cancer. She's there. And you embrace. And you try not to think about your dad, because you're not supposed to think about the people who aren't there. But it really bothers you deep down inside. But you push those thoughts aside, and everybody tells you those thoughts will fade in time. So you go with your reunited people that you knew on earth into this beautiful place. And there's just beauty everywhere, and you're happy. But you wanted so much to see your dad. You knew all along on earth that he wasn't a Christian, but you had hoped that God would see his heart and see what a good man he was, because your dad was a good man. Your dad was the kind of guy that would drop whatever he was doing and go help a friend in need. Your dad was the kind of guy that would donate plants to businesses that couldn't afford them and plant them himself, so that they had trees in their lot. Your dad was the kind of guy that other people went to with their troubles because he always listened. He was a caring, loving person, a giving, kind person. You adored your dad. You sat on his knee and looked up into his face and memorized every line and loved the sound of his voice. And all your life, you lived hoping to see him again, hoping against hope to see him again. And now here you are. Your long life is over. You've grown to be an old person, and you've died. And what has seemed like an eternity of waiting to see your dad again. And now you're in heaven, after following this God that you've called loving and merciful and kind and forgiving and just. Now you're in his kingdom because you followed him and because you could believe. But your dad was always a very logical, scientific person. He always needed to have substantial evidence to be able to believe anything. But you knew he had a good heart, and you knew that your loving God would see his heart. At least you hoped that your loving God would be able to see his heart, and that it would count to this God what was in his heart, the kind of person he was, because he was such a good person. And then you look around this beautiful realm, and you see other people that you recognize who lived on earth, who weren't nice people, who did horrible things. You see serial killers in heaven walking around, people who came to believe and accept Jesus into their heart at the very last moment before they died. You see these people who committed massive murders on earth. They're with you in heaven. You who spent your whole life worshiping this God and praising this God and trying to be as good a Christian you could be. You're there in the same place as these people that caused such harm on earth, and they're there because they accepted this God at the very last. They made it into heaven. But where's your dad? Where's your dad who you hoped for so many years to see again? Where is this kind man who held you in his lap when you cried? Where is he? This good person that everybody loved and everybody turned to. Where is he? And then you hear something. Something slips. Somebody says something that they're not supposed to, and you remember something you knew from earth that they're trying to make you forget now that you're in heaven. You remember where people go who don't believe. And you never really believed it on earth. You never believed that your loving, kind, just, merciful, and forgiving God would actually do that to somebody just for not being able to believe something. But now you're being reminded that the people who aren't there are the people who couldn't believe. You're reminded where those people are and what they're going through and who is putting them through it. You know, when you look at the face of the one that you worshipped and praised your whole life, that while he's smiling at you kindly, lovingly, with his other hand he's reaching across a vast gulf and he's inflicting endless, excruciating, unending pain and torment on your dad, on the one you loved, on the one who was there for you when you were little, on the one who was so kind and giving to everybody. And you know you'll never see your dad again. And you know you have to live in this heaven with people that you know were terrible people on earth, and they're right there up there in heaven with you. But this man that you love so much is going to be in that place, being tortured forever without stopping by the God that you praise, that you even in heaven continue to praise and praise and praise and praise and praise while he's torturing somebody that you love over and over and over forever. And you're praising him while he's torturing that one that you love. This is kind of what my Christian walk was. My dad was that kind, giving man. My dad died when I was 6 years old. I'm pretty sure he wasn't a Christian. But he was the best man. He was a good man. When he died, the whole congregation, well, I can't say that. When he died, the whole church choir and a lot of the congregation came to our house that night, and the choir stood on our front lawn and sang and lit candles. This was in Waukesha, Wisconsin. It wasn't a great big town, but it was a sizable town. It was a pretty big church. There had to be 50 people on our lawn. I remember standing in the front door. Just found out. The pastor had told me because my mom couldn't. I just found out that my dad had died that morning. And I looked out at those people. And I clung. Through the most part of my life, I clung to what my pastor said. That one day I would see him again. But then when I was older, I had to find out that people who aren't Christians, who don't believe, who don't accept Jesus into their hearts, don't go to heaven. And I knew that my dad never did. So I walked as a Christian, hoping that God would see my dad's heart, and that he would judge my dad based on his heart, not on some stupid thing that he didn't do, some stupid rule, some stupid hoop he didn't jump through, but be judged on his heart, on the kind of man he was, on the kind of life he led. The more I got to be a Christian, the more I realized that that was likely not going to happen, because Christianity, at least the kind of Christianity I was fed, you have to have Jesus into your heart. You have to accept him into your heart, or you're damned. Even if there was a God, even if somebody managed to produce evidence to prove to me that a God exists, even before I read in the Bible, even before I read the whole Bible and realized all the atrocities this God commits and condones in the Bible, I still would hesitate to praise and worship somebody, a God who would put anybody in a place of torment forever and torment them forever. Good people, good, loving, caring people, for simply not being able to believe something. Not everybody can just believe based on hearsay, or based on what a book says, or based on a bunch of people saying it's true. Some people need evidence. Some people need proof. And who made them that way? If there's such a thing as God, who made them that way? So, is it their fault that they can't believe if they were made that way? Wasn't my dad's fault that he couldn't believe? So anyway, sometimes I think Christians don't ever stop and think about what it is that they believe in. Christians want to know why atheists have such a hard time and get so upset talking to Christians sometimes. It's because Christians are mostly really nice people, but they praise a God who, a Christian might say to me, "Oh, I don't think you deserve to be tortured forever." And I'd say to them back, "But you're worshiping and praising a God who's going to torture me forever, who thinks I deserve to be tortured forever, and you're supporting that. You're praising that. That means you condone it. You're in favor of it. You think I deserve to be tortured forever." It's kind of hard to not feel some anger around people who are singing praises to a God that would torture somebody forever. It's hard for me to even imagine going back and believing in a religion that praises a God that very likely, if this God does exist, is right now torturing my dad. So, I just wish Christians would give it some thought. I'm sure everybody has somebody in their family that they love who doesn't believe. Do you really think you can stand to be in heaven enjoying paradise knowing that this God that you're praising is off somewhere? Because he can be at every place at once. So while he's in your line of sight, smiling benignly at you, he's elsewhere and he's torturing people. He's torturing somebody you know and love forever. I don't know how anybody could worship that. So anyway, I am off to bed. I just think that I wish Christians would give it a little more thought, what it is they're praising.